Good morning. Welcome to the February webinar, Replacing Repetitive Manual Processes with Simple Workflow Automation. My name is Mike Hellebuck, and I'll be hosting this webinar today. My role with DocuWare is I'm the Senior Director of Sales. I've actually been in the entire ECM or doc management or enterprise content management space for approximately 16 years of my young life. So obviously I have a lot of experience in the industry, and today we really want to focus on workflow automation. There's a number of you on our call today, so thank you very much for joining. And obviously a number of you are actually already DocuWare customers. So on behalf of DocuWare Corporation, we'd love to thank you for being a valued customer. And we're obviously excited to introduce to you, for the ones who haven't experienced the power of workflow, how to take your DocuWare initiative to the next level. So today, we're focusing on workflow automation. The agenda is we're going to be talking about the new pace for your organization, really related to DocuWare workflow. We're going to go through and actually do a presentation of the DocuWare Workflow Manager. The presentation will focus on an AP approval process, but I want to be sure that everybody's aware that this is not specific to just finance. It's really just an example from that standpoint. We'll touch base on some other areas within the organization that could benefit. And then we'll wrap up the actual presentation with some open questions and answers. So let's get going here. So what are we talking about when we talk about ECM or doc management? We're talking about digitalization, document management, and workflow automation. So efficiency, right? So capturing information within the organization and basically removing the paper to gain savings and really increase efficiency within the organization. So obviously those of you who are scanning documents now, congratulations, you made that first leap of faith. Now we actually need to move into what we call doc management, like DocuWare, and a solution that is there and capable, very capable, to manage your processes and manage the information once it's in an electronic state. Obviously, everything that becomes an electronic state, obviously we can now access through our mobile devices. And we can also talk about electronic forms as far as capturing data on the form and creating a document or sets of documents from those forms. But once we get the information into a doc management system, you can see that obviously we can achieve a lot of efficiencies, but we can also meet regulatory compliances. We can meet our records management or document retention guidelines. And we can also then tie data that we grab off of these documents, say using our intelligent indexing component, to integrate it with our ERP or other core CRM applications. But last but not least, obviously the key piece to this whole process is obviously turning this information into workflow automation. So taking these business rules that your organization has, when documents come in, you route them around to individual desks, and people write on them, sign off on them, maybe put a rubber stamp on them and move them around. The challenge with that, obviously, as everybody knows, documents get lost. People don't have access to information, so they're making phone calls and shooting emails around. And obviously, we're losing out on valuable time within our organization. So we're going to talk about workflow automation and effectiveness and being able to really kind of control or take advantage of the technology to eliminate bottlenecks within our organization. And here you see some bullet points, obviously, improve customer service, again, the bottlenecks. So great stuff from a workflow standpoint. So really, from a workflow aspect and DocuWare standpoint, we want to capture, process, and really use this available information throughout your business segments. So let's take a peek. DocuWare workflow. You can see the stamps that are kind of showing up here. We actually can put a rubberized stamp on a document that's electronic as it's moving through the organization. The key with this is now we can actually put a process in place that is manageable and we can audit it. What do I mean by audit? So obviously, as documents are routing through an organization, we know based on your business rules and your timelines when that document should leave one person's queue and move to a next. And if it doesn't, what do you want to do? We can obviously send an email notification. We can send multiple email notifications. And if it still doesn't transition from one step of the workflow to another, we can obviously forward it or move it to the management team. So obviously everything you're going to see today, guys, is available in a in-house system. So obviously if you're running DocuWare on a server, in your organizations right now. It's available in that aspect, but it's also available through our cloud. So DocuWare Cloud, we're going to touch base on that as well. Includes all of the modules, including workflow, that you can leverage for one price per month. So where's workflow beneficial at? This slide really kind of talks about different areas within an organization. And again, the folks that are on the line, you may be part of some of these areas, you may not, but it's just kind of giving a little bit of an overview of, say, different areas where workflow can benefit. For instance, human resources, recruiting, finding that talent out in the field to bring into your organization. And once we find that talent and decide to hire them, we need to bring them in an onboarding situation and route documents around for the employee to onboard. One of the key benefits of this is we can actually externally send electronic forms to that new hire, have them fill out that form, and actually create documents inside of your system, such as W-4s, emergency contact forms, I-9s, and similar. So obviously, we're going to go through an example of an AP workflow, but I'm going to come back to this slide again later, just to spur some thought within the attendees on the line to really think about these different areas that maybe you're involved in. Maybe you're in the logistics field, maybe you're in the legal field, but really just to think about the different paper processes that are going on within your organization now and how our DocuWare workflow system could potentially benefit. And then through our questions and answers and follow-up, we're going to ask you to either reach out to your authorized DocuWare partner or DocuWare themselves to see how leveraging the workflow module can help your organization. In my presentation, you're also going to see intelligent indexing. Intelligent indexing is a very powerful tool to automatically capture information from a document for the purposes of indexing. One of the main reasons why we came out with this tool is a company would say, Mike, it's very easy and simple for me just to take this piece of paper, walk over to a file cabinet, and put it into the file cabinet. So now we can challenge companies and say, let's race. I'm going to scan my document, and I'm going to index it and store it and see how long it takes for you to go find the file, put the piece of paper in, and come back to your desk. So the intelligent indexing module is a very advanced module that allows us to find data from a document and automatically identify it and index it on the fly. DocuWare Forms. DocuWare Forms can be a great piece that can either be part of a workflow process. So as documents are transitioning through a workflow process, maybe the user at that point needs to fill out an electronic form that will now live in the DocuWare system or be part of that workflow process, or maybe even generate a new workflow process in its own. Or even forms can be the start of a document or the start of a process. For instance, I fill out a purchase order requisition form, and that's going to generate a workflow. Or I fill out an application through your website, and that's going to fill out or generate a workflow. Or maybe I'm in a shop and I need materials, so I fill out a materials order request form, and that generates a workflow. So again, everything that you're going to see here is obviously available in our DocuWare Cloud. The nice thing about our cloud is it's all options or all modules and functionality of DocuWare are included in the cloud. The cloud system that we have is actually built on the Azure backbone. So obviously we have the security and safety net of the Microsoft platform where our cloud's at. And obviously the industry is really leaning that way. So if there's folks out are on the line right now that are interested in either coming on board with DocuWare, our cloud is a great option, or even the customers out there that are looking to move their internal systems off to the cloud, we can help. So let's take a peek. I'm going to log in to DocuWare, and the process that I'm going to take everybody through today is basically an AP approval workflow. Very simply, I mean, we do a lot within different industries, but the finance department is kind of our quickest bang for buck, where we can go in and put a quick workflow in to really automate the process of approving invoices that can obviously affect organizations from an early payment, basically discounts and early pay. If we pay that invoice early or on time, we can receive a discount maybe from our vendors. But it's one that we really focus on a lot because it's a quick bang for the buck, and the ROI is there, and it's something that you guys can leverage. And then obviously we can move into other departments. So what we're going to show today is an invoice approval process where invoices are going to come in. We're going to use our DocuWare intelligent indexing module to grab the data off the documents. We're going to store them, and we're going to route them through an approval process. So let's get going. I'm going to log into the DocuWare main user interface. So for those of you who are DocuWare customers, again, thank you again for being a valued customer. You know what this interface looks like. For those prospects that are on the line that have not seen DocuWare, I want to spend a quick minute of time just to go through the main user interface. So right here on the left-hand side is what we call our document tray. This is no different than a wire basket sitting on a desk where somebody would bring a document and drop it into your basket. Right-hand side is the DocuWare viewer. Obviously, there's no documents open right now, so we don't see anything. And up here are our basically controls that we have related to document trays, searches, lists, tasks. Lists and tasks obviously related to workflows and then folders. So very simply, to bring a document into DocuWare, I can just browse out and I can import a document. And by doing that, we just simply go ahead and select a document. So let's bring in an Excel file. Let's bring in, say, a Word document. And let's bring in, say, a PDF. Now, obviously, if we have a scanner attached to our desk, we can scan. And you can also, if you'd like, simply drag, excuse me one second here. You can simply drag and drop documents into these certain trays as well. Okay. Now, from the actual user interface from the trays, we can take any of these documents and we can select them. So I'm selecting a Word document, an Excel, and a PDF, and I can right-click and I can clip them together. And when I open this document, you will see it on the right-hand side of the screen in the DocuWare viewer. On the bottom of that screen, you will see that this this document is a Word document. And I can actually scroll through and go see all of the other document types that are associated with this, the Word document, the Excel file, and obviously the PDF. So it doesn't really matter to us. We can take multiple formats of file types, clip them together, and store them into the system. Now, from an intelligent indexing standpoint, I'm going to go ahead and scan some documents into DocuWare. So let's say we have my scanner that's attached to my PC here. It's going to open up the DocuWare scanning interface, and I'm going to simply hit scan, and it's going to run these documents through my scanner, and you'll see they're kind of coming up as a view in my scanning application. What I have this set up to do right now, folks, is basically it's going to auto upload. So I'm going to be scanning these documents. These documents are going to be going out to a network directory, and then DocuWare has a watch. Basically, it's going to be watching that folder, looking for any new documents that are coming in. So it's looking for invoices that are going to be coming into that folder. And once it does, it's going to pick them up and process them. So you see here, we had a 0 through 4. It processed those documents and it brought them directly into my tray. You see now, as I'm hovering over these documents, you see the green indicators. This is where our intelligent indexing engine has taken off. It has looked at each of these invoices and it has found the data that we need to store it by. And this is where I mentioned earlier, let's have a race. You take your piece of paper over to the file cabinet, find the folder, maybe look for the specific area in the folder you need to put it, and then come back to your desk. And I'm going to scan and I'm going to show you how I stored this thing automatically by grabbing all of the index information off it. So let's go ahead and store these into the system. I'm going to select all 4 of these documents. I'm going to right click. I'm just going to go ahead and store these into the file cabinet. And you're going to see the first image appear. And you're going to see the relative index values that we want to capture or store the document by. Now, these are all customizable for your organization. So obviously, if it's an HR file cabinet, you may have employee name, you may have employee number, or if you don't use company, you may use job number or job type. So it's all customizable and very easy to set up for you. But what you can see is the intelligent indexing interface has actually found the company name on a document. And over here on the right, you will see where it hit highlighted the information or the area where it found the document. It also went and found the document number or invoice number in the upper right-hand corner of the document. It found the order number, and it found a net amount. So if I scroll down on a document, you'll see it here. So we've already got all the information we need to store this document by. From a user standpoint, all I need to do is simply hit store, and it stores it away. Now, it brings the next document up that I need to index or store, and I could just simply do a quick verification and store it away. Third document comes up. We got the information correct. Again, quick verification of where the data is at. Now, as you see, folks, as I'm storing this away, you see my tasks up on top here. It starts changing from 1 to 2, and when I store this one, you'll see it turn to a number 3. This is the workflow engine kicking off. This is where we're taking this information now and starting a process where people need to do some work on it. Again, the power of workflow. I'm going to store the third one, and finally, let's just store the fourth one, and they are now out of my basket, stored into the DocuWare system, and I can retrieve them using any of those index values that it was stored by. Now, taking a peek into the workflow aspect, you're going to see I have some tasks. But before I go in there, I'm going to open up the Workflow Designer interface just to give you a quick overview. I'm not going to spend too much time in here, but just to give you a quick overview of what you're going to see. In the Workflow Designer interface, you'll see I have two file cabinets that have workflows associated to them. I have a file cabinet called the Document Pool, and I have an HR file cabinet. Within these file cabinets, there are different workflows that are available that will take off when certain documents come into the file cabinet that meet certain criteria. If I open up the accounts payable workflow, the one we will be focusing on today, you'll see a lot of different queues, but the key is these are simply drag and drop queues where I drag a task, it opens up information, I can name the task, I can tell who I want to notify, I can say what the decisions are, and obviously I can go into the escalations, meaning when do I want to send a reminder to this individual? When do I want to have the due date settings? And when do I maybe want to reassign this work because somebody has not approved it? So all we do is we drag and drop these certain tasks or parallel tasks if we need to send it to multiple people, if we need to assign data or look at a back-end ERP system to confirm information, or have conditions, send emails, or call web services. So those of you that are using Task Manager, you do not see anything that looks like this. This is kind of Task Manager on steroids when we get into the Workflow Manager interface. So obviously the documents will flow through this process, and we simply drag and move these fields around, obviously drag and drop the tasks, and then we just draw the lines to each of these pieces. Certain information like conditions, we can check conditions if that approver approved the full amount. And then we can have a condition sort of, hey, is the total amount of this invoice, is it greater than or equal to $5,000? So a condition meaning if somebody approves an invoice that is over $5,000, don't send it on. The CFO wants to take a peek at it, right? So we can put these conditions throughout your workflow process to ensure certain management steps are taken advantage of. So we're done with this. So there's always an entrance and an exit point. Let's go take a peek at our workflow process. So the first tasks that are assigned to Peggy Jenkins based on that workflow is we need to assign these invoices to a cost center. So you may call them cost centers, you may call them GLs, you may want to split these out to different GL codes. That is all available through the workflow process. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select an invoice here, and I'm going to assign this invoice to a cost center. On the bottom of our screen, you can see where I can actually open up and pick certain cost centers from manufacturing to sales. We're going to send this over to the manufacturing department. And I'm simply going to confirm, and it moves it out. And as you see, I don't click on my mouse anymore. It simply brings up the next document that I need to work. This document is at a pay invoice queue. So what this is telling me is that we actually generated a purchase order. The purchase order data lives in DocuWare. And DocuWare did an automatic match to that invoice up against the purchase order. And we don't need to actually send it out for approvals if you so choose to have a workflow system set up that way. We're going to assign this storage experts out to the cost center of to assign it to a cost center of manufacturing as well. And just to show you the ability to send to multiple cost centers, we're going to take the Phone Wizard bill, and I'm going to send this out to the actual sales and manufacturing cost centers because it's a phone bill, right? Maybe multiple departments share that bill. So we want to actually sign it out to two different departments. So I'm going to send this to the manufacturing and the sales departments. So that's it for that aspect. This one I can go ahead and book or just pay this invoice. Say we're paying it by check 123 and complete that, and it moves it out of the workflow. So Peggy has now sent different documents or invoices out to different departments or cost centers for their input and approval from a workflow standpoint. So let's take a walk down the hall and go log in to the manufacturing department. So that would be Brian Ford. Brian Ford logs into his system. And if Brian Ford is maybe not in DocuWare at the moment, maybe he's out in the field, you can see that through the workflow aspects, we also do have the ability to send email notifications where he can access through his mobile device and actually get right into the task for approval. Brian is in his office today, so we're going to open up DocuWare, and you will see that he has 3 tasks. And based on my workflow logic, his role at this point is, hey, I need you to check this invoice, okay? So he's going to open up the first invoice, and he's going to look at it. And if you see on the right-hand side, you're going to see that rubberized stamp. And that stamp is just a graphical representation of where that document has been. And we can see that Mrs. Jenkins on today's date actually sent that invoice out to the cost center of $21,000 and assigned a dollar amount of $857.09. But it also went to the manufacturing department as well. So I don't have anybody speaking on the line, so I'm just going to pick a number. Because of the fact this is owned by two cost centers, I'm just going to say, my portion of this bill is $402.34, and I'm going to confirm it. Again, brings up the next document for me. And you see here on the left, folks, we can actually approve or reject, and we can actually have fields here. So I can say that this is not my cost center or wrong department, but I'm going to leave it as not my cost center, and we can send this back out. And then finally, we have the last one of US Steel for $1 million, again, assigned to me. And again, I can approve it here, or if you choose up on the upper right corner here, you'll see a stamp. I'm going to move up here to the upper right of the screen. I can actually approve or reject it this way and physically drop that stamp on the document. So when I'm assigning that stamp or basically approving over on the left-hand side with the form field, it's physically putting the stamp, as you see here, in an area where it finds white space on the document. I will just go ahead and physically apply it from that standpoint. And now Brian Ford has completed his tasks. But if you recall, we sent the phone bill, the phone wizard invoice, to two separate departments. We sent it to the manufacturing and the sales department. So I'm going to walk down the hall again. We're leaving manufacturing, and we're going to go over to the sales department, who is Fred Winter, and we're going to log into DocuWare, and you're going to see that Fred has to approve that invoice as well. But one of the unique features that you're going to see about the system is that we also, from the lists up here, that we see that he has to check an invoice, obviously, so he has some work to do. We see the gross amount of $857.09, and we see the total open remaining amount of $454.75. And next to this, obviously, the received on, the reminder, and the due date settings, all again driven by the workflow, so he knows when he has to actually have this stuff completed and moved out of his task, or it's going to be rerouted to a manager. So let's go ahead and open this up. You can see, obviously, again, the stamps assigned to both cost centers. And we can see that my partner down the hall, or my coworker, Mr. Ford, approved $402.34, which gives me an open balance of $454.75. So the math's already done for us. He simply confirms, and that workflow is now complete. So let's go back over to the accounting department, and we'll show kind of what's happening back in the accounting side now that these things have been transitioned and routed around. So if I log back in as Peggy Jenkins, you're going to see that now the phone wizard invoice has moved to a pay invoice queue. And again, at this point, we can take the data that we have, because we have the different cost centers, we have the GL codes, we have the amounts, and we can plug that directly into your ERP system, or maybe your accounting system for payment of that invoice. We see the storage experts is back to assigned cost center. And if I open that up, we can see that Ford basically rejected this invoice because it's not his cost center. So at this point, we can reassign it to a new cost center and start that workflow over. But you also notice, or you don't notice, that there is one document, one invoice that is missing from my view. One unique thing about the workflow manager as well, folks, is not only does Peggy, because she's the controller of the organization, she has access to her tasks, but she also has insight into the entire workflow process because of the fact that she owns this workflow. This is her process to monitor. So if we go to monitor task, we will see that that US Steel is out at that US invoice for US Steel is out at CFO approval. The reason being is through our workflow designer interface, I focused on a condition of an invoice being greater than or equal to $5,000. And you can see that this invoice obviously is much greater than $5,000. So it met that condition and routed it over to the CFO. So let's go over to the CFO. Let's walk down the hall again and go see what she sees in her world and complete that workflow. And our CFO today is going to be Elizabeth Cash. When we log in as Elizabeth, you will now see the actual invoice that is in her inbox waiting for her approval. Furthermore, obviously, she gets an email, or if she has our mobile client for DocuWare, she can approve these directly through her mobile device wherever she may be. So here is that actual invoice out at CFO approval. Again, if you have authority, you can even right-click on these documents and you can open up the workflow history. So we track all the steps of this process, where it started, a task of it was assigned by Jenkins to her cost center or to the manufacturing cost center and date and time. We can see the approval from Ford from that date and time, and that's kind of where that's what we tracked at this point. That's where we're at. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and approve this and move it on in that workflow process. So that has now left the CFO's work queue and has moved back over to the accounting department. So logging back in or going down the hall and walking back over to Peggy's office and logging into her system, you will now see that US Steel is at a pay invoice step in the workflow where she can now book it to her accounting system or pay it if she's paying by check. And again, if I right click and open up the workflow history, you will now see that final task where the CFO had approved it on a date and time. So folks, that is just a quick overview of the actual workflow interface. Hopefully it was you were able to ingest it, but now I want to go back and actually take a peek at some of the other areas just to spur some thought and talk about different ways that maybe you guys could leverage workflow within your organization. So back to this slide. We're talking about accounting and we're talking about invoice approval processing. How about contracts management? How about from a sales side of the house for proposal development and reviews of contracts? Now within DocuWare, we can even have timers set up on documents that they wake up. Maybe it's a contract review, or maybe it's a driver of a truck or high-low certifications that we need to renew on an annual basis, that these documents can wake up from an HR file and start a workflow process and notify individuals within the organization that they need to get recertified or take tests. So that concludes, obviously, and hopefully you guys have some ideas of where DocuWare workflow can be leveraged. What I urge you to do is contact your authorized DocuWare partner or contact us at DocuWare, contact.us@DocuWare.com, and let's have a discussion. Let's talk about the ways the workflow engine can benefit your organization, take control of the business process, ensure compliance, and really at the end of the day, guys, save you a lot of money. So at this point in time, I'm going to open it up for any questions. And through the interface within the right-hand side of your screen, or maybe it's the left, depending on where you placed it, feel free to go ahead and hit me up with any questions. Somebody asked if this video is being recorded. Yes, it is being recorded. So obviously we will share this out and provide a link for all the individuals or anybody that maybe wasn't able to attend, if you would like to show that to them. There's another question. Is there a way to search for tasks? Yes, actually, if you have access to that workflow within DocuWare, you can actually see where those documents are within that workflow process. But again, the key is you need to have access to those, or basically security rights, to be able to see into that workflow process and understand where things are. So one of those index values that we could have on a document would be maybe a status, and that status would tell me kind of where that document is. And if you can search for, basically, let's look for all invoices that are at a status of pending, we can actually go ahead and see a result list of all workflows or all documents that are in a pending state of a workflow process, and obviously expose that information any way you want. One other thing you can actually have as well is we could have lists in DocuWare that, if you own that workflow, it kind of show you the different tasks that are out there and where things are in the process. All right, so another question here. How can you know how many steps are needed to finish the flow? Well, that's a great question. Really, that boils down to your current process. So obviously through your DocuWare partner or DocuWare professional services, we will look at the current process that you have. You may have already flowed that process out and maybe did a kind of a chart with the different steps in that process. Our goal would be to take that 10 or 15 step process and maybe make it a 5 or 6 step process, because some of the steps in your existing corporate workflows could be automated, and where we'll leverage the technology to remove steps. But basically, this is an engagement between yourselves and us, right? So we know our technology very well, and you understand your process very well. So we kind of get, we come together and meld together, so to speak, to understand that workflow process and determine really how many steps it needs and how we're going to leverage the technology to minimize those steps, or basically just remove them completely if possible. Okay, let me see here. Another question. Is there a way to configure a mini workflow process? Yes. So within the DocuWare system, and you can actually take any document and you can right click and you can create what we call an ad hoc workflow. So if a specific document comes in that maybe doesn't meet or fit the criteria of the traditional workflow that we had set up through your organization, the user with rights and authority can right click that document and create or start a individual workflow process. And I can send it out to a specific individual and basically give them their decision criteria. So yes, that is fully capable within the DocuWare system. All right, next question here is there a step-by-step instruction of how to set up an integrated forms to workflow to storage? That's another great question. I don't know if there's really a step-by-step instruction on how to integrate a form into a workflow. The form, once you create the actual DocuWare form and you store the form, it's really the index values that we're capturing from that form that will start that workflow based on your workflow logic. But I would actually reach out to your partner and have them walk you through how to do that if need be. A question related to export functions. So can we customize an export file to be able to import into a back office program? So yes, that is kind of part of the workflow system as well. We really need to understand the system that you want to put the data into, right? So let's just say you're using Great Plains from an accounting standpoint. It's going to want maybe comma delimited or XML type of format. So we have all of the data inside of DocuWare. We have the different cost centers or GLs that we've routed it around to, different dollar amounts and such, or from any process from that matter. We have all of the data. We just need to compile it and spit it out really in the format that those systems are looking for. So yeah, we can assist in that regards as well. And it looks like it's about it for questions. I think we're running close to our time. So I really appreciate everybody's time today. I hope you got some value out of this presentation and see where the DocuWare Workflow Manager engine can help your organizations. Again, this is really the third step. And when I look at the history and the time that I've been in this industry, the actual aspect of tying in the workflow process is really the biggest bang for your dollar. So scanning documents and storing them saves time and money. But now when we can manage the process and automate it and route things around and ensure that nothing is falling through the cracks anymore is where you really receive the true value of a true enterprise content management system like DocuWare. So thank you very much for your time today. And everybody have a great rest of your day and even a better weekend. Thank you.